Hi, my name is Fuji Wing, author of the Full Stack Angular 15, Bootstrap 5, and Net 7 API log series. In this screencast, I'm going to go over the token service server that is powered by the Duende identity server. The agenda include the following. First, I'm going to do a quick demo of the talent management application, and then going to take a look at the security architecture behind it. And then we'll do a demo of the token service server using the admin UI. So here's a screenshot of the talent management application where it's going to show the employee's position. And let me go ahead and look at the application and show that to you. So this is the Angular 15 Bootstrap 5 running on the local host. It connects to the web API backend to retrieve employees and all position for display. If I go to the employee menu right now, it's going to say, hey, this requires login. So I go over to the option to log in here. The application is going to redirect to the identity server. The identity server here has option to log in logo with an account from the local database of Microsoft SQL Server, or the login also support for external login using account from external providers such as GitHub, Twitter, Google, Facebook, or Microsoft. So all of these are potential use for single sign-on. For example, company may have Office 365. Everyone have a account to use Office 365, so the application can be configured so that it use the O365 account to log in, which is the Microsoft right here. For this demo, I'm going to log in using the local account, admin, and the password here. We'll talk more about that, the local account later on when I do the demo of the identity server. So now when I click on login here, it should redirect from the identity server back to the Angular application. So now I can go to the employees menu right here, and I can see the listing of the employees here. I can do paging and all of that here. So that's just the front end. But now let's take a look at the security architecture behind us. All right. So when we looking at the single page application such as Angular, if the front end is Angular is really just a JavaScript, and it's used XCTP to make XCP web API call to get the data. So in terms of security, the Angular application gonna be making HTTP call to the token service server over here, which is powered by Duende IdentityServer 4, so it can get the JSON web token. And the identity server has the what we call the well-known endpoints to support login, to support get the token, refresh the token, look at the users info. So Angular will make use of those well-known endpoints so to retrieve security related information. once the Angular client get the JSON web token, then it can pass that through the header to reach out to web API to get data, like for example, getting a listing of employees, for example. So the once the API, that's what we call the API resource, where the REST API located, and when the JWT pass through the header received by the web API, it can do a backend call, back channel to reach out to the token service and say, hey, can you help to verify, make sure that JWT is valid. So overall, there are the method to for all of these connectivity over HTTP protocol right here is following the OpenID Connect. So it's the industry standard to make sure that all these are secure. The token service right here is very important. Is control, is issue out JSON web token, and it's also responsible to validate the token. So that's a very high level overview of the security underneath of the Angular web API application. So at this time, I'm gonna go ahead and log into the token service server, and gonna take a look at the admin UI through the user interface, and take a look at client user roles and so on. But before doing that, first I'm gonna show you how to run the token service server from Visual Studio. So here is the token service server here. In my blog post on Medium, I have step-by-step instruction on how to download it and run on the local here. So I already have this on my local machine right now. And I'm going to just right mouse click on this before running this, make sure that I look at the properties. And there are 3 projects that need to be set as started. Token service.admin, which is the an MVC application that will display the admin UI that I can manage a user, role, client, etc. The second project here called token service.admin API. This one is actually a REST API that utilized by the admin UI front end, which is an MVC. So it will call the REST API, the API here, to persist the data to the backend database. For this particular instance right here, by default it runs on Microsoft SQL Server. So the all configuration of IdentityServer will be stored in the Microsoft SQL Server here. The third project need to be set as start is the token service identity right here. This is really the Duende identity server. This is that support the login and validate the token, etc. So let me stop this. I'm gonna run this one again. So we have 3 projects set as startup. So in the end, then expect to have like 3 web browser running, 3 instance of it running, and each instance I'm gonna go over one by one right here. So one of the project here is the identity server. So when it runs on port 44310. And then we have another project that running on port 44302. This is the admin UI web REST API. So you can see there's a bunch of API resources here, API resources here, API scope. Down here we still have the clients, and maybe user and roles and so on later on. Here's the roles and users. All right. So now let me go ahead and click that log out to this admin UI because I want to show you how the login look like. So the admin UI is said, hey, don't know who you are, so it redirect to the identity server to say, hey, help with the login. So the great features about the identity server is that it support login. So we may have different application like Angular and .NET MVC, and you have React, Blazor these days, or the traditional web form. So instead of implementing the login inside of those applications, that can be outsourced to the identity server. So the client application just say, hey, I don't know who you are, I need you to log in. And by building an interface to identity server, it can outsource that to identity server, and then once the identity server logs the user in, it's going to redirect the user back to the client application that's asking for help with the login. So here I'm going to, in this particular instance right here is the admin UI of identity server. So it's going to say, hey, help me log in. So when after I log in right here, it's going to redirect back to the admin UI to manage the identity server. So now we take a look at different features within the admin UI of the identity server. This is the dashboard where you can manage, you can see different option here to manage the clients, identity resources, API resources, API scope. Very important in part of the OIDC. When we had to specify the scope, for example, this got set up through the UI here, and certainly the setup the users, the roles, and any persistent grants that issued it out. Any key used for signing is also displayed and managed, and also the audit logs. We'll go more into detail into these in a little bit. So let's try out the clients. Notice that on the up menu right up here, these are the dashboard listing out these menu options right here. But throughout, you can also access the features here through the menu at the top. Okay, so let's use the dashboard right here and click on the clients. We're going to manage this. What you see now is just a listing of the clients. So clients here is really application. We need to have the application register, so it can have a client ID. And depend on the type of application, additional attributes will need to be set up. So this particular one right here, earlier I do a demo of the talent management, which is an Angular application. So let's open it up and take a look at see what inside. All right, so first let's have the client ID, and this is the value. It had to be unique. Typically this get coded into the client application. Usually we have either client ID and maybe client secret and etc. So this is what need to be provided and coded into the client when it asks the identity server to support login. This is a quick client name right here, just for description, short description. The basic tab right here, there's some type of protocol setting. This one just enable this client, if there's a need to can disable it instead of deleting it. The protocol type right here is OpenID Connect. So there are, this is the industry standard of OpenID Connect right here. So this one got implemented, and from the programmer point of view, when you look at OpenID Connect, there are attributes such as the email and username and profile. So there's certain standard of attributes going to be communicated through this OpenID Connect. And JSON Web Token, for example, it's going to have the ID token and then the access token. They like break it out. So this right now, this is just have the OpenID Connect right here, the industry standard here. This talent management is a Angular application, so considered like a public client. So the we require Pixie for login. A while, a couple years ago, it was the implicit flow was used, but it was not secure. So the Pixie is the newer standard. And down here, there's a scope right here, the identity scope, and then also the API resource scope down here get specified. And these are allowable scope. So when the client make connectivity, it can specify these scope as part of information sent to the identity server. Down here, it lists some other scope that we more right here that can be selected and included here. But this just for this talent management demo, it just have these set of scope right here. Redirect URIs. This is important. You might have many client application out there, and each of them be configured a certain URL. Whatever the URL that's set up, that need to be configured in here, so that identity server only redirect the application to the user back to the application that has been authorized, certain URL. So this is good to control invalid redirect to application that's set up and may not be registered in here. Allow grants types. This is called authorization code. This is the latest and greatest. There's some warning down here and say this is implicit flow. This is obsolete of users. I have a separate blog in Medium talking about this one. But anyway, authorization code is the way to go. Now, manage client secret here. There are application that require the client secret. For example, like an example like Postman, for example. When we do Postman login to call to identity server, it will require the client ID and client secret. So that can be set up. But for talent management demo app right here, this is not a public client type. This is a public client, so it's going to require username, the user to log in. So there's no need to set a secret here. All right, so we just look at the basic tab. Let's take a look at the authentication and logout. There's a lot of just standard right here, but the one that you want to pay attention to is the post logout redirect URIs. So this is the URL that say if on the client side, if they say, hey, can you log me out? Identity server, can you log me out? And identity server can help to log out a user. And then it just need to know, hey, after it's logged the user out, where can it redirect the URL to? So this is the authorized one. All right, let's take a look at the token one. The token here, the algorithm is important, but the default algorithm, so ideally just don't touch that. If you want to increase the token lifetime, or you want to depend on your organization policy, you might want to take a look at that. But the one that's really important here that typically might get some errors if this is not set up is called the allow course origins here. So course origin, this is a part of security. So you might have the client on a different domain than what you running your token service server. So you want to authorize those different domains to allow to talk to the token service server. Then that's the URL you want to put it in here. Consent screen. This is most if the user log into the token service for the first time, it could prompt the user to consent and say, hey, I'm authorize you on behalf to look at access some of the scope, open ID, for example, email and profile, etc. So those need to be whatever the scope that we authorize for the client, it's going to prompt the user to accept those. But for talent management, it could be internal use, kind of like there's no need to do that. So you can disable it by require consent, just flag it off. Device flow, it doesn't apply here, but if you have like a thermostat, or you got a watch or something that you want to configure to log in device flow, this is where you specify some information to support that. All right, so we talk about the clients. Let's take a look at some other setup. This is like identity resources here. Uh, this is the relate to the attributes relate to the user who logging in, like role, profile, open ID, email, address. Uh, so these are standard one, but as needed, additional can be set up. API resources right here. This is typically, you can think of it's like a logical way to organize web API together. So here's an example right here called the employee profile. But you may have like maybe perhaps you want to organize your API resource by the department, for example, or for example, it could be human resource, or you can have operation, or you can have sales and marketing, and you can organize those. Or you may have different support clients out there that you can organize, grouping the resource, the web API, into some kind of logical grouping. And then you have the API scope. Within scope is API scope typically relate to more like permission. Can you set it up so it can do a read or write? So here's an example right here that can associate this read and write to a particular API resource that's set up earlier. Employee profile, but can I do some like write to the database, or can I do a read only? Persistent grants. So these are the grants that have been assigned out to the user account out there. Keys. These are the key that you to sign the JSON web token, and it's kind of like have a way to view what it's been used and for what purpose. All right, user and roles. So the users here, when the token server start up for the first time, it's gonna load the user demo user from the JSON files. So let's take a look at where that file at. Okay, so here's the token service admin UI source code. You open it up. You can look at the source right here. It's under the token service admin, where there is a file called identity data.json right here. So here is set up some example roles in the JSON, the settings right here. It's the hey, when loaded, start up for the first time, create some role here, SDR admin role, employee manager, HR admin. And then it's go ahead and set up some sample account, demo account right here. Certainly one on the admin, the password. If you want to change the password when at the startup, you can change it here. Or after the identity server has been up and running, you can go to the admin UI and changing the password. So let's go back to the admin UI. So here's the demo account in that JSON file that loaded in here, and you can do an edit and take a look at this account right here, and you can, like for example, if you want to assign a role to a user, for example, you can go to the user role tab right here and pick a role and then add. So then now this account will control a git right here, have the employee role as well as admin role. Okay, the other one underneath here is the roles listing here. So you can see that these 1, 2, 3, 4 rows are matching exactly what in the identity data right here. You have all the employee, these rows, this got set up in here. So how does the roles works? When identity server issue the token to the client application, let's say John Doe logging in, for example, and now we want to say, hey, also put in the token the roles that John Doe have, because we want to know what role the John Does have so that we can control access within the client application. or within the REST API, we want to know what role does a user have so that we can enable or allow or disallow access to run a web API endpoint, for example. So that's what roles for in here is support role-based access. I will have a follow-up logs and talk about authorization in the demo, the talent map at a later time. And we'll more information about that one. All right, so that's user and role. Here over here we have logs. We have audit logs right here. So if you want to see, you know, who logging in, and you can look at this audit log, and different event happened in the application. It will log it here, and also have the error logs. So this is quite handy. When you set up the clients for the first time, it could be redirect URL is not set up or course is not set up, and if any of those not set up and may result in an error, this is one way to go in and troubleshoot and see what error it is. So that's just a quick screencast demo of the features inside of the IdentityServer. To the admin UI, there's things that configuration can be set up and persist into a database, and this is the front end to do that. Again, so there's an option right here, do admin logout. So now if I select this option and say, hey, are you sure you want to log out? So this identity, we're asking IdentityServer, say, hey, can you help with the logout? And they say yes. So you know, I mentioned there's a setup to say, you know, if logout return to where. So that's why it got loaded here. Click here, and it take the user back to whatever the application that request is to help with the logout. So that is it for the screencast with the demo, kind of like more deep dive into the features within the IdentityServer. Thank you for watching.